boys and girls. Welcome to day 11. Not 11, day 12. This is going to be a fun little lesson. We're going to not only do something a little different, but we're combining your Great Minds teacher lesson and your classroom teacher lesson. And what we're going to try to do during our live lessons is get through as much as we can so that we don't have as much to do tomorrow, and then you'll pretty much be done with ELA until we're back in school on the 30th. So we tried to make this a little bit easier of a couple of days for you. So I really hope you enjoy this lesson. Okay, so let's do this. Our essential question is the same. How do cultural beliefs and values guide people? Our focusing question is new. What important beliefs and values guide Chief Joseph and his daughter Sound of Running Feet? That should be a question. I'm really sorry. Okay. Content framing question. What does a deeper exploration of portraits reveal about leadership? So today we're going to be looking deeply and noticing and wondering about portraits. And what does that show us? That reveal word, what does that show us about leadership? Okay, and our learning goal, analyze two portraits to explain how leadership qualities are conveyed. Conveyed is another word for reveal, which is another word for show. And our check for understanding is going to be to describe in a quick rate how two artists show the importance of their subjects. So today, you just need a couple of things. You need your workbook. We're going to be looking at handout 17A, so I need you to go get that, and I need you to open up to those pages and your day 12 in sync journal. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video and get those. And you might also want to have your book nearby. You may need it today, you may need it tomorrow. It all kind of depends how far we get. Okay, so pause the video now to get those. Okay. So, a leader is defined as someone who is able to guide other people. People look up to leaders and try to follow the example that they set. Leaders are not always popular and sometimes have to make difficult decisions. So I want you to think, who is someone you look up to as a leader and why? What different types of leaders can you think of? Who are some of the leaders in the novel Thunder Rolling in the Mountains? I want you to pause this video now and respond in your InSync journal for numbers 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now that you answered 1, 2, and 3, and if you haven't, go back and do that now, pause the video. But if you have, who is someone you look up to as a leader? When I think of a leader, I think of my grandfather right away. He was very quiet. He was just a very special kind of person. He also had a really exceptional way of setting such a good example and of letting me know without criticism when I had set a good example or when I hadn't. Also, what are other types of leaders that you thought about? I know I thought about how principals lead entire schools, the president leads the entire country, teachers lead entire classrooms. And I have also known many, many students who are leaders who set a good example and they take initiative. Who are some of the leaders that we've come across in the novel? What about Sound of Running Feet? What about Two Moons? What qualities do they have that make them leaders? So today is the first visual art lesson of the module. Writers communicate and express their ideas through writing, just as you've been doing, and artists do the same thing through visual art. We can actually read and build knowledge the same way we do through text as we do through visual art. So today's reveal question is, what does a deeper exploration of portraits reveal about leadership? Well, today you're going to look at several portraits of famous leaders, and the painting type that we'll be looking at are portraits. We're going to think about the qualities that make someone a leader and how artists show or portray those qualities in a portrait. Okay, well, so what exactly is a portrait? Let's read the definition. A portrait is an artistic representation of a person. Just so you know, an artistic representation might be a painting, which we'll see today. It might also be a photograph or a drawing. So why do you think an artist might choose to paint a portrait of a particular person? Go ahead and copy this definition into your Insync journal, and I want you to answer number 4. Why do you think an artist might choose to paint a portrait of a particular person? Pause the video now to do so. So I thought about an artist and how an artist might choose to paint someone who they really like or respect, or perhaps a person they think is very important, or for some reason, or possibly even someone who is quite well known. So here we have 2 magnificent portraits. Take a moment to look at these 2 portraits and read their titles and the artists' names. As you can tell, these portraits are of 2 different leaders. On the left is a portrait of White Cloud. He was the head chief of the Iowas, which was a Native American tribe. Lewis and Clark actually traded with the Iowas during their expedition. Like the Nez Perce, many other tribes like the Iowas faced conflicts with the United States government over the land during the era of westward expansion. An artist named George Catlin painted this portrait of White Cloud. On the right is George Washington, the first president of the United States of America. This portrait was painted by an artist named Gilbert Stuart. And we're going to be looking at both of these paintings today. So for the next part, you're going to need handout 17A, which is called Notice and Wonder About Portraits. If you need to retrieve this handout, pause the video now to do so. Okay, boys and girls, for this part of the lesson, we will be working in our blue workbooks. You'll need to turn to the 2nd and 3rd pages of the handouts. Okay, there's 3 pages. The first one says Chief Joseph. We're not going to be doing that one right now. You need the one that says White Cloud and the one that says George Washington. So you'll have one on the left in your workbook and one on the right in your workbook. In a moment, I'll show you the portraits again. I want you to record what you notice and wonder in response to the questions I post about each one of the portraits. And we're going to think about similarities and differences between the 2 portraits and how the 2 leaders are shown. It'll be really useful to put the 2nd and 3rd pages of handout 17A side by side, so I wouldn't rip them out. You can leave them right as they are to help you record notes and compare and contrast the portraits. Okay. So let's look at the first box on each page. On the left you have White Cloud. What do you first see when you look at this portrait? So that's your I notice. And then on the right you have I wonder. And then on the right page you have George Washington. In the column you have I notice. What do you first see when you look at the portrait? And then on the right column it says I wonder. So you're going to be filling out both sections just as they are. This one, this one, this one, and this one in your workbook page on paper. So you also need a pen or a pencil for this. Okay, so what do you first see when you look at each portrait? What do you wonder? I want you to pause the video now to take a few moments to study each portrait and record your noticings and wonderings in your workbook about what you've noticed and wondered. And when you're ready, I want you to come back to this video. Okay. So make sure that you have these 2 boxes filled out in your workbook before going on to the next part. So a few things that I noticed and wondered about the White Cloud portrait were there are a lot of colors in the background. And I also noticed what he was wearing, colorful feathers and jewelry. I also noticed a green painted handprint across his mouth. And I wondered if that handprint had a significance. In the George Washington portrait, I see lots of dark colors, both in the background and the outer clothing that he's wearing. There are light colors in his hair, face, and scarf. I wonder why there's nothing else visible around him. So if you need to do some more noticing and wondering, you can absolutely pause the video to do that now. But if you're ready to move on, you can. Let's go to the next row here. What is he wearing? So you're going to look at the White Cloud side, notice and wonder. What is he wearing? And George Washington, notice and wonder. What is he wearing? So let's think about what each person is wearing now. Pause the video to study each portrait and record what you notice and wonder on the second row. Go ahead and Start the video when you're ready to move on. Okay, so a few things that I noticed and wondered about White Cloud is that he seems to be wearing a fur robe. He has feathers in his hair and several types of jewelry. Maybe it's made of bone or even teeth. He also seems to be wearing face and body paint. I wonder if all the natural resources that are used to make what he's wearing come from his homeland. And in the George Washington portrait, I noticed that he's wearing a black jacket with a white shirt. He has white hair, which might even be a wig, and I wonder if he planned to match the background. Let's go on to the next row, the third one. Describe the expression on his face. So right now, before you go on, you should have this box, this box, this box, this box, this box, and this box. All of these filled out so far. And now we're going on to this third row for White Cloud and George Washington. Think about what you notice and wonder about the expression on each person's face. Go ahead, study the portraits, and pause the video and come back when you're ready to move on. So a few things that I noticed and wondered about White Cloud was that he's looking off to the side. He does look serious, and his lips are slightly turned up, and that makes me wonder if he's looking at someone or something else. And when I noticed and wondered about George Washington, I see that he too looks serious. He's looking straight on directly at the viewers. His mouth is set in a straight line. And I wondered if he is relaxed or nervous as he had his portrait painted. Okay, so we're on this next and final block here. What do you see in the background of the picture? What do you notice and wonder? So go ahead and pause this video now, study the two portraits, and answer this question in your workbook. So in the portrait of White Cloud, I noticed the background is white with yellows, blue, and green. It looks like it might be the sky with trees in the background. Makes me wonder if he was painted in his homeland. And in the George Washington portrait, I see that the background is very plain. It looks like a single dark color, maybe dark brown or black. It really makes me wonder where he is. I really can't get an idea of that. So you did a really nice job noticing and wondering about these portraits. It's really amazing the details that you can see in a work of art that really show how carefully the artist worked to create it. Now we're going to compare and contrast the portraits, or observe the similarities and differences between them. You'll be using some of the details you noticed and wondered about on handout 17A, so keep that out. What differences do you observe between these two portraits? You're going to pause the video to study each portrait and consider that question. Read over your two notice and wonder charts on handout 17A as well. And in your in-sync journal, I'd like for you to record your response for number 5. So go ahead, pause the video now, and then come back when you're ready. So a few of the differences that I noticed was that the White Cloud painting has a lot of bright colors. Well, the George Washington painting definitely doesn't. In the White Cloud portrait, he seems to be looking off to the side, while George Washington is looking more straight on, right at the viewers. What differences do you observe in the leader's regalia? Okay. Think about what regalia is. So think about, well, one big difference I noticed is in the leader's regalia, which means it's the unique clothes or decorations that are worn on formal occasions. Often they are worn by people who hold a certain position. So think about when someone graduates, they wear a cap and gown, or someone of royalty who wears a crown and jewelry, or someone in the military who wears a dress uniform. Because the men in these portraits are important leaders, White Cloud, chief of the Iowas, and George Washington, the leader of the United States, they're wearing certain regalia. What differences do you notice in these leaders' regalia? Pause the video now to study each portrait and think about the question specifically. Respond to number 6 in your in-sync journal. So White Cloud has face and body paint. He's got jewelry and head ornaments and a fur robe. While on the other hand, George Washington is wearing a wig and formal men's clothing that was typical of European men's formal wear at the time. He's wearing a suit jacket with a shirt and a scarf. What similarities do you observe between these two portraits? I want you to pause the video now and record in number 7 of your InSync journal. So a few similarities that I noticed were they both have a serious expression on their face. Formal clothes for their culture or regalia like we just discussed. Both are painted alone, and both have a very similar background. They're just plain. So did you notice in the portraits that each man was painted all by himself? No one else was in the painting and no other things. What might that mean? Why might that fact be important? Pause the video and respond in your InSync journal to number 8. Do you think they were painted alone to show how important they are? Maybe the painter painted them alone to get the audience's full attention while they were looking at the portrait. Kind of like a sign of respect. George Catlin actually painted many other Native American leaders and portrayed them in the same way that European American leaders were presented and respected. So remember what today's reveal question was. What does a deeper exploration of portraits reveal of leadership? In this final portion of the lesson, you're going to reflect on portraits and the idea of leadership. So my question now is, how does an artist show the person he or she is painting is a leader? In your InSync journal, I'd like you to answer the last 3 questions, numbers 9 through 11. How does George Catlin show White Cloud's strength in his portrait? How does Gilbert Stuart show George Washington's confidence in his portrait? How do Catlin and Stuart show the idea of leadership in the portraits of White Cloud and George Washington? When you're finished, don't press submit quite yet. We have 2 more things to do. Okay, so now that we've finished noticing and wondering about these awesome portraits, I want you to turn to page 7. And I want you to listen and read along to the paragraph that begins, Joseph, my father, son of old Joseph. And I want you to think about the qualities that identify leadership, specifically in Chief Joseph.
Joseph, my father, son of old Joseph, was an honored chieftain of the Namipu. He was their chieftain because he could see far away into the land of the suns and moons that had not yet risen, at the snowflakes before they fell, the small green worm deep in the ruddy apple, the thought before it is spoken. He was a kind, gentle man. For me, too kind with the whites. He was not a warrior. On the backs of the running horses are soldiers, he said. Their leader is Howard. The man who has only one arm? I asked. My father nodded. We were standing among some trees on the shore of Wallowa Lake. Waves piled up on the shore. Stout trees thrashed and bent.
Okay, so sorry, I didn't mean to go that far into, oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go that far into the recording. My bad. Okay. I'm not supposed to be here either. There we go. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and answer number 13 in your InSync journal. Identify leadership qualities of Chief Joseph. And we're using that paragraph on page 7. Okay, and when you're done with this question, you can actually submit your InSync journal and come back because we have one more thing to do before you are set free from ELA for Thanksgiving weekend. Okay, so you have your day 12 CT questions at 18. Okay, so I want you to click on this link in your Schoology folder, and it's going to bring you to this page. Now, this is really important. The reading is right here at the beginning, but it doesn't go through each question. So what you're going to need to do is you're either going to need to turn to, I believe it's page 16 and 17 in your book, and you're going to need to find this passage, or I have this exact picture of the passage saved in your Schoology folder for you to open. Please use this to help you. You have to read it first, okay? You have one chance and you will be getting a score. There's a standard per question. So when you are done, you will get a score right away. I think I might have to grade the last one though, so just wait on that to make sure you don't get half credit or not. But once you're done with your question set and you submit that, you have completed day 12 completely. You are ready for your long weekend. Please make sure that you keep up with your spelling and that you don't save it to the last day for it's due next week. But other than that, great job today, guys.